From the worst moment in Ronaldo's career to Messi finally completing the story, these are the 25 saddest moments in football. And first up, Messi gave the world a sad moment that we'd never forget. See guys, at the end of 2021, Messi was in a tricky situation at Barcelona. His contract was all set to expire in the summer and looked like he'd renew. He just won the Copa America with Argentina weeks back, his first international trophy. And Messi was so happy that he'd already committed to signing a new contract with Barca that would see him retire until he came back and heard the news. The club was in a financial crisis. Some of the club's upper staff had gotten involved in shady deals, and as a result, the club's finances were in danger. They tried everything, but in the end it came down to Barca having to make the most difficult decision in the club's history. It was either they let Messi leave and be able to pay other players' salaries, or keep Messi and not be able to register the team. In the end, they chose the first one, and a few days later, this video of Messi broke billions of hearts.
Es muy difícil esto para mí.
He'd spent all his career at Barca, but now he was leaving. Shame, man. In Messi's mind, I'd bet he wished he could have had the perfect send-off like another Barca legend did a few years back. A few weeks before the end of the 2017-18 season, Andres Iniesta made the announcement he'd be leaving Barca after spending 18 years at the club. Iniesta grew up at Barca. It was pretty much the only club he'd known. He spent all his life there, but now Iniesta knew it was time for the new generation to step up, and he didn't want to stand in the way of the club progressing. So he decided to leave, and in his final home game of the season at the Nou Camp, that photo of Iniesta went hard. Damn, I still get goosebumps just thinking about this one. He got the ultimate send-off too. That was Sergio Ramos's dream. When Ramos first joined Real Madrid in 2005, I'd bet even he wouldn't have been able to imagine the amount of success he got. He became a club legend. Ramos won everything at the club, including scoring the biggest clutch goal in the club's history to put them on the road back to La Decima. However though, in 2021, just before the season came to an end, Ramos and the club got into a difficult situation. The thing is, Ramos was entering the final years of his contract, and he wanted a salary upgrade, but the club said no. In the end, they both couldn't agree, and a few days later, Ramos was ready to say goodbye. A legend was leaving. Ouch. I can't lie though, when it comes to farewells, there's just one I can't get off my mind. When the entire city of Rome came together to say goodbye to a legend. 23 seasons at the same club. He'd spent more years playing for Roma than I've spent years on Earth. Francesco Totti's a legend. In 2016, after bagging over 307 goals and 208 assists for Roma, Totti was ready to say goodbye. But it seems the city of Rome wasn't, because on his final home game at the Stadio Olimpico, the emotions were everywhere. I'd cry too, you know, that was emotional. Totti's final speech to the Roma fans was about thanking them for the years they cheered him on in a Roma shirt. Even his rivals stayed to say goodbye. One of the most beautiful moments in the game. Unlike the time Vinicius Jr. became the latest victim of a fight that had been going on for ages. In 2022, Vinny was part of the Real Madrid team that took on Valencia away from home, and while the game had its drama, minutes towards the end, everything kicked off. Vinicius had noticed that a section of the Valencia fans had been hurling slur words at him all game, but he wanted to focus on his football, on the pitch, and ignore all that until the ball went out of the pitch. And in trying to get to it, Vinny snapped. Seeing a world-class baller like Vinny cry about something like this, then you know it must have gotten to him. In the end, Vinny's acts to fight racist issues didn't stop, but this game at Valencia was the turning point. Speaking about turning points, it doesn't get more emotional than when Manchester City finally finished a mission that had taken them years. Ever since the Saudi takeover in 2010, City had one ultimate goal, and that was to win the biggest competition in Europe, the Champions League. In 2016, they got to the semi-finals for the first time, and 5 years later in 2021 they reached the final, 90 minutes away from achieving their biggest goal, but it didn't happen.
What a night for Chelsea! Spare a thought for Manchester City!
In 2022 it looked like they were all set for a final appearance with seconds left against Real Madrid in the semis, but they somehow collapsed and lost 3-1 to get knocked out. In 2023 City made it to the final again, and the nerves were intense, but this time, after all the hurt of the past decade trying to get to this moment, they were born ready, and at the final whistle the mission was complete. The first one in the club's history. Finally! Behind the surface it was more than that, especially for Pep Guardiola and Kevin De Bruyne.
7 years to fighting with it.
The two of them had been at the club longer than most. De Bruyne joined City from Wolfsburg in 2016, and Pep became manager of City a year later. Together, the two of them had suffered the disappointments more than anyone else. In 2021, a large part of the reason City lost the final was because of this.
Such a sad end to the season, to the night for Kevin De Bruyne.
Gutted for him. In 2023, City got to the final again, and at this point, it just felt like something was up with KDB, man. It happened again. Another injury. However, though, City managed to grab the game-winning goal to seal the win, and at full time, Pep and KDB shared a moment. 2023 was full of crazy moments for clubs. City finally won the trophy they'd been looking for, but over in Germany, it didn't quite happen. Dortmund lost the league in the most painful way possible. They'd done everything. That season, against the odds, Dortmund managed to keep up the pace with Bayern Munich, and coming into the final game of the season, they knew what the mission was. All they had to do was win, and they'd be champions of the league for the first time in 12 years. But against the odds, they went behind at Mainz. To make it worse, Bayern were leading at Cologne, meaning if Dortmund didn't act fast, they'd choke on it on the final day. In the end, Dortmund drew the game 2-2, but the scores at full time said everything, because just like the coaches and players knew, they'd let it slip while it was staring right in front of them. Ouch. On the plus side though, Dortmund had reasons to celebrate a couple of months later. This time it was because one of their own had pulled off a miracle comeback and conquered a continent. In 2022, when Sebastian Haller signed for Borussia Dortmund, he must have been looking at getting to work and settling down at his new club straight away, but pretty soon Haller realized that not just his career was going to be on the line, his life was going with it too. He was diagnosed with testicular cancer. Straight away, Haller went into treatment, and as a result, football no longer became the most important thing to him. The urologists and Dortmund medical staff, though, told him not to be scared, helped him through his journey to be strong, and against the odds, Haller beat cancer. He returned to training in early 2023, just in time to make it for the African Cup of Nations finals with his country, Ivory Coast. And in a tough final against Nigeria with less than 10 minutes to go, Haller's story had the most beautiful ending. Scored the goal to win Ivory Coast its third African Cup of Nations, and was now officially a national hero. But not all stories have beautiful endings though, just like Jermaine Defoe and Bradley Lowry. In late 2016, Bradley Lowry was the most famous kid in the league. His story was captivating. Lowry was battling cancer at the young age of 5, but even with that, his energy was beautiful for all to see. Lowry developed a friendship with Sunderland's captain Jermaine Defoe, and the two of them became inseparable. Everywhere Defoe went, Bradley was there with him. Heck, he even won the Premier League Goal of the Month for December. Thing is though, Bradley's case got worse, and after weeks of trying to put up a brave fight, he passed, and his best friend was devastated.
Yeah, it's been difficult.
It makes me want to cry too. Bradley will go down as a hero, just like one of the all-time greats of the game. In his prime, Diego Maradona was unplayable. He could do anything. Score goals, drop assists, he even captained Argentina to an incredible World Cup win in 1986, and won the Goal of the Century award at the turn of the century. But after retiring, Maradona had health problems that kept on getting worse, and in 2020, to the shock of the entire world, Maradona's fight was over. He died, and the world was struggling to believe it. Maradona had died of a heart disease, and all over the tributes kept pouring out for him. But you see guys, where it really hit was in his local club's next game. Maradona had always been a huge fan of Boca Juniors. He even had his special box reserved for him and his daughter Dalma. And when it hit Dalma that for the first time in her life she'd be going there without her dad, it broke her. Maradona lives on, and now he can finally play beautiful football in the sky with his legendary friend from Brazil. Just like Maradona, Pele was a legend who changed the sport. He won the World Cup at 2017, and in his career became the undisputed legend at Santos, and scored over 1,000 career goals. After retiring, Pele went on to get involved in local sports across the country, helping his local team Santos, and even the Brazilian national team. But as the years passed, he grew older, and come 2022, Pele knew it would soon be time to join his greatest friend in the sky. In December of 2022, Pele was moved to end-of-life care, where his closest friends and family gathered to say one final goodbye. And on the 28th of December, the news was confirmed. A legend had gone to play football in the sky. Don't realize how big a legend is until he's gone. Pele changed the sport, and his death affected billions of people worldwide. It's always sad to see a national hero leave. What's worse, a national hero almost died on the pitch, but lucky for Christian Eriksen, his teammates were ready to do anything to save him. Coming into the 2021 Euros, in Denmark's opening games, all the attention was on their star man, Christian Eriksen. With the 10 on his back, he was perfect. And what's more, more, just a few days to the start of the competition, he'd secured his status as a national hero by showing everyone how to subscribe to the best football content in the world. Told them to click that button down below to Mr. Football. Eriksson was carrying the weight of his entire nation on his back, but I guess it must have been too much for him because 4 minutes to the end of the first half, Eriksson went out cold. When the doctors got to him, they pronounced him half dead. Lucky for Eriksson though, there was a defibrillator in the stadium that yanked him back to life, and during his treatment process, his captain, Simon Kjær, gathered the rest of the team around to form a shield and block Eriksson away from the cameras, and also comforted Eriksson's wife and told her it would be okay. Eriksson survived, and at that moment, the video of him in the hospital came out assuring fans he would be okay. It warmed hearts worldwide. He was okay again. It's crazy to think just how much trauma can affect a person. Eriksson's almost dying on the pitch gave the Danish fans nightmares, just like in 2014 when the Brazilians watched their Seleção crumble before their eyes in the most painful way possible. Coming into the semi-finals against Germany, Brazil was against it. In the quarter-finals, their star man Neymar was injured and ruled out of the tournament in the quarter-finals, and captain Thiago Silva was suspended for the semis. But on home turf, they hoped by having the home crowd behind them, it'd be enough to secure a miracle win over Germany. But it didn't happen. Now, they didn't just lose. There's no one who would have been able to predict what would have happened next. A national tragedy. And by full time, the tears weren't just in the stadium, it was all around Brazil. Tough. Brazil's defeats left scars on fans they thought they'd never recover from. Painful stuff, but probably not as painful as losing the one person who'd supported you on your journey to the top. For Alexander Sobolev, football was the only thing he'd ever known. All he wanted to do was go pro, and lucky for him, his parents were ready to give him all the support he needed to make it to the top. It wasn't easy though. He had to grind his way up the ranks, playing for teams like Dynamo Bernal and Tom Tomsk, but eventually all of his hard work paid off, as by 2020, Sobolev was now the main man for one of the biggest clubs in the country, Spartak Moscow. But just as it looked like his life and career was finally on the up, in a couple of days it came crashing down. His mum died. The news broke Sobolev, but instead of taking a break like most people would, Sobolev decided to play, and right after scoring, he had his goal celebration as a tribute to his mum. That's touching, man. Goodbyes are hard. I had the same feeling in 2017 when I found out this all-time legend was leaving. Mr. Chelsea. John Terry had been captain of the club since 2004, won over 15 trophies at the club, even played for England during his time with the Blues and scored some decent goals too. But with a few games left to the end of the 2016-17 season, Terry announced that he'd be leaving the club. See, Terry realised that he wouldn't be playing as much in the new system, and he was a club legend regardless. He figured he'd rather go out as a hero now, and on his final game at the Bridge against Sunderland, Terry went off to a hero's reception. He got subbed off at the same time as his jersey number. Iconic. At full time, it was Terry giving a speech to the people who cheered him on for over 17 years, and all the emotions came out. A legend says goodbye. Always hard, especially when that legend was a fan favourite like John Terry, or Liverpool's greatest coach of the 21st century. When Jurgen Klopp first became coach of Liverpool in 2015, he referred to himself as the normal one. During his 8.5-year spell at Liverpool, Klopp won every possible trophy on offer except the Europa League. He even delivered the club's first league title in over 30 years in 2020. But at the start of the year of 2024, Klopp dropped the news that broke Liverpool's hearts. Klopp was leaving. He claimed he didn't have the energy to keep doing it daily anymore, and Klopp's an honest guy. He always wanted to give 100% to the club at all times. His last season ended with Liverpool winning the Carabao Cup in February, and for the Liverpool fans, that was enough, because on his final home game against Wolves a few days back, they all gathered to give him a fitting send-off. Klopp's a strong guy. I mean, he managed to hold the tears in, something my man La Joya couldn't do, the day he found out he was breaking up with the old lady. When he first joined in 2016, Paulo Dybala was one of the most promising talents in Serie A. After making waves at Palermo, Juventus splashed the cash to cop him, and his time with the old lady was nothing short of magic. He scored over 100 goals for the club and established himself as one of the best players in the league. But by the end of 2022, Dybala knew his time at Juve was up, so he made the announcement public, and on his final home game at the Allianz Arena, the tears couldn't stop flowing. La Joya says goodbye. Emotional. I guess some players are wired like that, and it's not just the sad moments that make them cry. Luis Suarez couldn't stop welling up after proving his haters wrong. See, when Luis Suarez moved to Atletico Madrid in the summer of 2020, it was on the back of some hard business. Barca had switched coaches in the summer, and the new man at the club, Ronaldo Koeman, well, he didn't think Suarez was good enough anymore, so he let Suarez leave to join league rivals Atletico Madrid. Big mistake. Suarez finished as the top scorer for Atleti in the league that season, and on the final day he was celebrating celebrating a league trophy. To do it like that, beat the odds and prove your haters wrong in winning the league was special. No wonder Suarez kept tearing up on that phone call. What should have been a bad situation turned out good for Suarez, just like it did for CR7 in 2016, when he and the rest of the world thought he'd blown his only chance of becoming a national legend. Euro 2016, the final in France, and Portugal were up against the hosts, France. They had the odds against them, but when you've got Cristiano Ronaldo on your team, you always stand a chance. Ronaldo wasn't messing around in the competition too. He'd scored 4 goals to take Portugal to the finals, and the game plan must have been to feed him the ball in dangerous positions as much as possible. But all of that went out the window pretty soon, midway through the first half, and Ronaldo was out. He'd injured his knee. Ronaldo tried to continue with the game, but after going down again, he knew it was over, and that video of him leaving the final on a stretcher broke millions of hearts. That should have been it, but I guess fate had other plans for Ronaldo, because at the end of the game, he was in tears again. This time though, for completely different reasons. Against the odds, they'd done it. Portugal was the champions of Europe. Unfortunately though, this won't be the only time Ronaldo would have a moment where he looked down and out with the national team again. 6 years later, he was near the ropes, only this one didn't have a perfect ending. At the 2022 World Cup, Ronaldo entered the tournament hinting that this one could be his last with the national team. The closest he'd gotten to winning the World Cup was in the semis in 2006, and now he was captain of a golden generation. Ronaldo knew this could be his last chance at winning the big one. Portugal made it to the quarter-finals against Morocco, and for this one the coach benched CR7. After falling behind, Ronaldo came on in the second half to try and rescue the game for his team, but it was already too late. Morocco refused to give in, and as the ref hit the final whistle, Ronaldo knew deep down that this might have just been it, and the reality broke him. There's nothing more painful than losing after giving it your best shot. Just like Ronaldo, Neymar knows that feeling, after almost taking PSG to the promised land in 2020. 3 years after joining PSG in 2017, Neymar looked like he'd finally achieved the big one at the club. See, PSG had designed on winning the Champions League, but every time they'd made it to the knockout stage at that point, Neymar was already injured and unavailable. This was the first time he was fit enough to play at the knockout stage, and they made it to the final against Bayern Munich. Neymar was pumped, and this was his chance to finally show the world what he could do, rise to the occasion in the big game. But unfortunately, despite his best efforts, it didn't work out for Neymar. And by full time, realizing the opportunity was gone, Neymar was in tears. He'd done everything leading up to that final game and just missed out. What's worse than losing a Champions League final? Losing the biggest one of all, the World Cup. The 2022 World Cup, France versus Argentina, and it was epic. See, France was the defending champions from 2018, and the last match from their title defense was against Lionel Messi's Argentina. Mbappe was the star man for France coming to the final. He'd scored 4 goals in the tournament already, but Argentina was determined to get this one over the line. With 15 minutes left to play, they were 2-0 up, looking like they'd secured the trophy already. But Mbappe said no. He scored a brace in 4 minutes to tie the game at 2-2. Messi scored an extra time to give Argentina the lead again, but Mbappe still refused to give up. He scored minutes later to make it 3-3, the ultimate carry job, a hat-trick in the World Cup final. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough because in the penalty shootout that followed, Argentina won it to lift the World Cup, and Mbappe was devastated. You've got to feel for the guy. He did everything that night except win. It's funny how this works. While Mbappe was looking sad and out after losing the final, on the other hand, La Pulga was in tears after securing the biggest one of his career. Messi was at that stage in 2014, the World Cup final against Germany, but this time he lost. 2022 now, and this was his chance for redemption. Messi had announced that this World Cup was going to be his last one, and with that, all the pressure was on him to make it count, and it's safe to say he did. In the final against France, Messi was on standby to watch Gonzalo Montiel take the penalty that could seal everything, and once it went in, he dropped to his knees in tears, because he knew at that moment he'd completed football. Messi had finished his story, but it's still only second on the list because at number 1, 2 of the biggest rivals in the game's history showed that some things are just bigger than football. In April 2022, the news broke out that Cristiano Ronaldo and his partner, Georgina Rodriguez, had just lost one of the kids they were expecting, Angel. The death of his son was so painful that Ronaldo needed time to grieve, and as a result, he missed Manchester United's next game against their northwest rivals Liverpool. But in that game, the Reds from Merseyside did something for Ronaldo that was truly iconic. They showed support for Ronaldo in his grieving period, the ultimate respect. I guess losing his son like that made Ronaldo start living a secret life. For years, he's been hiding stuff about his kids and family away from the public, until recently when he came out and said the truth. Click the next video to see Ronaldo reveal what he's been hiding about his kids.